that Propel, which has an app called Fresh EBT, is willing to share with us and with the community information about the customers who are SNAP participants who use the app to track their benefits and get other information. And the 4 million SNAP customers that use the Fresh EBT app have been providing a lot of information in real time during COVID-19 that Propel has been lifting up since the onset in March 2020. And with these monthly surveys, they're giving us yet one more avenue to understand some of the hardships that families are confronting across the country, not only in dealing with affordability for enough food for themselves and their families during COVID-19, but also other basics that they've been struggling with. If there is any positive news that we've been hearing in some of the prior reports, it's been about some of the temporary relief that the federal government has provided, not only on SNAP, but on some other important programs to help meet the need that families have during COVID-19. So we're very interested to hear today from Julieta Cuellar, who is representing Propel and going to sift through the most recent of those monthly surveys from a representative sample of their 4 million customers, and that's May of 2021. So that's the most recent survey information. And Julieta, thank you so much again for sifting through this and presenting, and I'll turn it to you right now.
Thank you so much, Ellen, and very happy to be here presenting this information to everyone today. So let's go ahead and get started. Can you go to the next slide for me? For those of you who aren't familiar, at Propel, we focus on building modern, respectful, and effective technology that helps Americans with limited income get through the month every month. As Ellen mentioned, we have an app called Fresh EBT, which allows people to check their balance, their EBT card balance at any time. It also offers them additional value through coupons and through job opportunities. In addition, in the last year, we've added a new feature that's one of, I believe, our most popular, which is the Benefits Update Center, which allows people to view changes in policy related to SNAP, but also just really pretty much all programs that they might benefit from or already receive. And as Ellen also mentioned, since March 2020, we've been surveying our users pretty much on a monthly basis to see how they were faring originally under the very dramatic change in circumstances due to the pandemic, but then over time, continuing that survey and just using it as an instrument to learn about how we can improve the experience, better address the needs of our users, and of course also realizing that it's a really useful instrument for people like you who are today on this webinar and just partners and advocates, because we do recognize that we have a very special and unique opportunity to reach so many people every month. As Ellen mentioned, we have over 4 million monthly active users, and we're very thankful also that so many thousands of people, want to see in the app an invitation to complete a survey and actually complete it. The surveys can be quite long. We ask a lot of questions, and people give us their time, their stories, and we appreciate that very much. So in terms of the May survey, which I'll be presenting today, we had, if you can go back to the previous slide. So we had 5,034 responses of, as I said, over 4 million users. The survey ran from May 1st to May 14th. They all run for the first 2 weeks of the month because that's when we have our highest traffic. At the beginning of the month, generally when benefits are hitting accounts and people are trying to manage that, manage those benefits. And as I've alluded to, all the respondents are EBT card holders. Next slide. So the major takeaways from the May survey results, from our perspective, were that tax filing rates suggest that a quarter of our users who are eligible, those that have children under 18, may not actually start receiving the child tax credit payments in July. As many of you know, this is a huge change to the social safety net, a major help to households that have been struggling for, definitely the past year, but before that as well. And we've been doing a lot of research outside of the survey, within the survey, to try to figure out how well Fresh EBT households are set up to start receiving these payments. And I'll get into that a little bit more, but we're a little bit troubled by a quarter of households that appear to be eligible but have not taken the steps to start receiving those payments. In addition, if you're on these webinars, if you've been on them in the past, I often focus on these measures that we have for food insecurity, housing insecurity, and we've generally been seeing a trend of all those measures improving since about December or January. And what we're seeing this month is that a couple of those measures are ticking back up, some quite dramatically. And I will speak a little bit to that. And then finally, we also ask people questions about receipt of these new programs that have been developed to respond to the pandemic and beyond, pandemic EBT, extra SNAP deposits. And we see that they're reaching more and more families, which is a great positive. And we also see an actual impact on those food insecurity measures. So next slide, please. So getting into tax filing a little bit, so just to level set here, the child tax credit is something, as you probably all know, that has existed for some time, but the big change that's happening now is that in 2021, half the credit's going to start being paid out to eligible households in an advanced way on a monthly basis. And those payments are going to start on July 15th. And they're as much as $300 per child under 6 and $250 for children 6 through 17. So, those amounts don't start to phase out until about $75,000, I believe, for annual income for single households. So I think overwhelmingly our user base is going to see that influx of payments. However, we follow this very closely. The IRS is saying that you need to file taxes in 2020, so that they have your information, they can determine your eligibility and start making those payments. So we've been asking our users for the last several months if they filed their 2020 taxes. Sort of the final tally, because the deadline was on May 17th, was that only 59% of our users filed taxes this year. And among users with children under 18, those who are most likely to be eligible to start getting these payments in July, thankfully more filed, but still only 74% said that they had filed taxes. So we've also done research outside of the survey that gets into a little bit of a deeper dive as to what are the barriers to tax filing, how do people perceive it, who are those who don't file. And I added just a few points here to kind of fill out the context that I'll go over just quickly. And this is drawn from a separate survey and also about 13 user interviews that we did last month. So many Fresh EBT households just that don't work or earn little income, they view tax filing as something that is like pretty much high risk and low reward, which is why they don't do it. People find doing their own taxes to be difficult, stressful. There's this kind of a perception that it's like a test, like the IRS knows everything there is to know about your household. And if you make a mistake, you're just going to get in trouble. So why do it, right? And then paying for a preparer feels less stressful, right? Putting your tax filing in the hands of a professional, but it's often prohibitively expensive. And I would say that the good news is that a lot of the households we talked to did file taxes last year because of the stimulus payments. And the non-filer portal in particular, which launched after the first stimulus payment, people used it and found it easy to use, even people who really don't normally file taxes. There were a portion of people who had trouble with it, however. And the second piece of good news there is that the federal government relaunched the non-filer portal yesterday so that people can go in, file a simplified tax return, and hopefully start receiving the child tax credit. So we're also, pushing people towards taking that step within the app. Next slide, please. Here are some quotes I referenced before that we kind of give people the opportunity to share their stories with us. We ask open-ended questions every month in these surveys, and we've been asking for the last several months, like what would $300 a month for every child in your household until they turn 18 mean to you, which is like a rough approximation of what the permanent expanded child tax credit would be. And here's some of what people tell us. I think that these quotes capture a great diversity of experience. A lot of people talk about being able to move, get a new house, buy a vehicle, or just provide their children with extracurricular activities or things that just cost more that they can't currently provide to them. Next slide, please. Here's a bit more. Some people also tell us that it won't do much for them, or they're concerned about, like this person at the top talking about Section 8 increasing their rent as a result of getting this new source of income. So there's definitely a lot of hesitation and skepticism on the benefit. And of course, you see a lot of people talking specifically about being able to eat better as a result of getting this influx of cash. So I think this just wanting to kind of come back to the importance of this new benefit to households after getting a bit into the weeds of what are some of the barriers that they face in accessing it. Next slide, please. So switching gears a little bit, as I mentioned, we ask a set of questions every month about food insecurity, housing insecurity, material hardship, and in general, those measures have been dropping steadily, except for, I would say, measures around housing, and in particular, a question we ask people if they currently live in stable housing, like a apartment, a house, and people who are homeless, living in motels, staying at different people's houses, we tell them to answer no. And that had been sort of not steadily dropping, jumping around, seemed to be dropping recently, and now we've seen it reach really its highest level with over 10% of users who responded to the survey saying they don't currently live in stable housing, and that's up almost 2 percentage points since last month. As I say here, the previous high was in March 2021, so we've been seeing high levels this spring as other things improve. And then after steadily sort of improving measures across these other questions, we also saw an increase in the amount of users who say that they decided not to pay a bill in the last 30 days, up 2 percentage points. And then we also had a slight increase of people saying that they relied on family and friends for meals in the past 30 days, which had been decreasing since January. Here's a quote from a user kind of speaking to the continued hardship of being without stable housing and truly relying on others to get by. So, while things seem to be opening up and improving, clearly a lot of people are still struggling, and it's important to keep that in mind in this greater context of hopefully emerging from the pandemic. Next slide, please. So the good news is that these programs that the federal government has responded with, like Pandemic EBT, providing extra SNAP deposits, they are reaching more families as far as we can see in our data. So the portion of our users who are receiving extra SNAP deposits went up by over 6 percentage points since April. Now 61% of people are saying that's the case. And in the case of Pandemic EBT, almost a 6 percentage point increase since April. 40% of people are saying they're now receiving Pandemic EBT. And we only ask people if they're getting Pandemic EBT if they say that they live with children under 18. So, we're trying to zero in on the eligible portion of respondents. The caveat here is that it's kind of complicated. This is all self-reported data, and there's not a lot of clarity in terms of what people are getting, right? They're seeing deposits hit and they don't necessarily know what it is or what to attribute it to. That's also why we created the Benefit Update Center that I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar. That's a place where people are getting extra money in on their EBT accounts and maybe are sort of wondering, like, what is this? Can I spend it? If I do, will I have to pay it back? The Benefit Update Center, we hope, is a place where people can learn more about what's behind those numbers they see in their account. So the other sort of nuance to this is that while these programs are reaching more households, there are racial disparities in receipt. Only 53% of Latinx users say that they received extra SNAP deposits, while 64% of white users and 63% of Black users said the same. And when it comes to pandemic EBT, we see more Black users saying they didn't receive PEBT versus white users. And in terms of the impact that these programs have, we compared these food insecurity measures of saying that people saying they've eaten less in the last 30 days, people saying they skipped meals, have visited food pantry, with those who received one or both of these programs and with those who didn't. And as you can see here, there's a difference in terms of the portion of people responding that they have experienced these measures of food insecurity. Next slide, please. And I will just close with some more of our users in their own words. We asked, and we've been asking probably since last September, the question, how have you helped or been helped by others? And if you've been on these webinars before, you know that there's an astounding level of generosity that our users display for others, people in their community, family members, friends. But the answers to these questions also really demonstrate the incredible level of hardship that people are enduring. Some people helping in spite of that hardship, some people really feeling like they're unable to do anything for anyone else. And so we capture really, I think in this question, a great variety of experiences. So I'll let you read those. And in the meantime, I can start taking your questions. I think that Ellen or Naomi can correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you can type them in the Q&A box here.
Yes, please direct all questions to the Q&A box on the bottom right of the WebEx screen.
And before we get to that, maybe if you can go to the next slide for me. I also just wanted to share that, so in addition to this webinar being recorded, as was mentioned and FRAC posts on YouTube, we also at Propel have a new page to share with you. This is actually an old screenshot. It's called Insights. We have a new Insights page where we feature the sort of takeaways from the monthly survey. You can see all of them through last September on this page, but we also have been writing these sort of more in-depth reports focusing on different topics. The most recent one you can see here, there's a screenshot of it, focuses on the experience that our users of color have had during the COVID pandemic and just looking at sort of the disparate impact. There will soon be one up that focuses on specifically like the child tax credit receipt issues that I was sort of getting into at the beginning. So I would encourage you to go check that out if you would like to learn more. Okay, so someone has asked, did participants share anecdotes about, despite having enough money to afford food, they faced other food access barriers, perhaps related to transportation, COVID-19 fears, mobility, and more? Thank you for that question. We definitely see that a lot and have seen that throughout the pandemic in these open-ended responses. A lot of people talk about helping others by giving them rides to the store, especially people talking about helping out like elderly neighbors or family members, people who didn't feel safe enough to leave home, and talking about helping those neighbors or those family members access help. Yeah, a lot of people talked about giving others rides or having to rely on others for rides and that being a problem. We also asked a question in previous months, and I think we brought it back for the June survey, which was like, Actually, that's incorrect. We've still asked it this month. We've asked it for the last few months. It's sort of like, how is the way that you have shopped for food or eaten changed since the pandemic started? And we also asked a question about like, what would extra SNAP deposits mean to you? Like, say you got $50 more a month per person, what difference would that make? And in those questions, people often reference, I think probably earlier in the pandemic, sort of, if I got more SNAP deposits, I could shop in bulk or shop more so that I could go to the store less often and expose myself less to COVID. So it's like sort of another dimension to that question.
Once again, feel free to use the chat or the Q&A box to submit any questions.
Okay, so I see another question here in the chat. Do you have a way to communicate with your users regarding resources? If so, do you have a way to limit by geography, zip code, or the like? Oh, okay, maybe this is only directed at me. But thank you nonetheless. I'll answer it. So this person in particular had a program they wanted to get the word out about. I think this would be helpful for everyone. We do, as I mentioned, have a feature in the app called the Benefits Update Center that mentions programs, and those are geographically focused. So there's obviously like updates about federal programs, but the app is available in all 50 states, plus Puerto Rico, Guam, Virgin Islands. And we do know where our users are. We have their state or territory, and we also, I think in many cases, have their zip code. So we do, this is like an enormous feat. I don't do this, my colleagues do, so I admire them very much for this, but they are always on the lookout and tracking the implementation of these federal programs at the state level. And so people, when they open the Benefits Update Center, actually see, the update regarding SNAP or pandemic EBT based on the state that they're in. So we can share sort of geographically specific resources. And we do it in the Benefits Update Center, but there's also like other spots in the app where we can share resources. There's sort of a carousel that's on the homepage. So there's a variety of ways that we can share resources, and we can target people too for surveys. Sometimes we do that for interviews. So if people are interested in sharing resources or getting the word out to people through FreshEBT, my email is actually on the next slide. If you can switch to it, I'm happy to follow up with you. Someone was also asking how we can get the word out about the app to clients. That's a good question. I don't know if I have a good answer to it. What we've found is that people often find the app through family members or friends, just other people. Some people hear about it from their caseworkers, which is great too. But we have a website called FreshEBT.com that has a link to download the app in the App Store or the Play Store. It has information about FreshEBT in each state, which is sort of a way that people find us. We also have a very active Facebook page, in which a lot of our users are sharing resources with each other. It's sort of a pretty dynamic and interesting platform. So a lot of people, I think, find us there. To be honest, I don't think we do really much of any marketing or outreach advertising to get users. And I think that's a testament to the sort of value that we bring users, that we have so many people who use it and are spreading the word sort of organically. But we would definitely appreciate your help in getting this resource out to more people. Thank you. Okay, I think there is another question. Let me see. What are the best ways to get people to take the surveys? What were the incentives? Sorry, what were the best ways? So we actually don't offer any incentive to people to take the survey. When we do user interviews, we recruit through a survey, but if we contact people, we end up having a call with them. We do give them some money for their time. Usually those calls are like 30 minutes. And we give people, I believe, $40 for 30 minutes of their time. So in the case of user interviews, we do compensate people. With the surveys, it's very clear at the beginning that there's no compensation, and people fill them out nonetheless. It's a bit of a mystery to me as to why people do fill out the surveys without, any kind of like monetary or other sort of incentive. I think it does come across in the open-ended responses sometimes, how much people want to, or seeking an outlet or appreciate an outlet to voice their frustrations or their concerns or just their experiences. And I should say, I need to mention this in every webinar, that all of the quotes that are shared in this presentation that we share anywhere, we obtain people's consent to share them. So lots of people fill out the survey, and a portion of people, at the end, after they've completed it, we ask them, is it okay if we share, your words with policymakers, advocates, and people either say yes or no. They also have the option to give their name. And so based on their answer there, that's how we decide what we do share or don't share. I don't know, maybe we should dig into that a little bit more, but I think that we are profoundly grateful at Propel to our users for giving us their time and their experiences, even though we don't quite understand why they do. I think that we're probably out of time, but thank you to FRAC for having me again, and thank you to everyone for their questions and for listening in, and look forward to seeing you next month.
Thank you so much, Julieta, for another phenomenal presentation, and for helping us to make sense of it all. And we're looking forward to hearing from you again in June. And so people can stay tuned for additional promotional material with the date and time for the upcoming webinar in June. And I hope that everybody has a good rest of your day. And thank you so much for spending time with us this afternoon or morning. Bye, everyone.